This is part two of the BIBBA Beat Improvement course of 2022. Although we will consider natural queen cells and encourage their use if they're available and they come from good colonies, the course really will concentrate on what one might term artificial queen rearing. So what is artificial queen rearing? I've actually looked for a definition and I can't really find one, so I've actually made one up, and I think it covers most of what we're discussing. It's really to encourage bees to convert a worker larva into a queen by manipulating the larva or the cell the egg was laid in, then presenting it to a colony that is in the condition to build it into a queen cell. Now that might sound a little bit long-winded, but it covers all the relevant points, and really it's appropriate to what we're doing. So what do we use then for these artificial queen cells? Well, we're often asked, or I'm often asked, if you use eggs. Well, it is possible, but it's difficult. I have tried to use them. I've done quite a lot of experiments, and I've done quite a bit of reading of literature, and although, as I say, it is possible, it is quite difficult. You don't always know the age of them, so you've got to get the eggs laid and then use them at a certain time. Otherwise, you can be anything up to about 3 days out for the emergence. In my experience, there's a very low acceptance rate, but it's much more successful with older eggs in broodless colonies. That's what I found. So we won't be going down that road. What most people use are larvae up to 48 hours old as a larva. Now, some people say that the younger the larva, the better. That may well be the case, but I've found little obvious difference in the quality, whether it's a very young larva or anything up to, as I state there, 48 hours old. So the artificial methods we will be discussing, certainly in this video, are grafting, cell plug, miller, and cell punching. I'm only briefly going to describe each one so that you know exactly what's happening with each option. We will cover some of these in the practical course. Grafting. It is the most common method, and one that virtually all the commercial queen breeders use. Basically, all you're doing is transferring a larva from an existing worker cell to some sort of cup that's usually been made by the beekeeper, or man-made anyway. Personally, I think grafting is not a particularly good term. It has more to do with apple trees and pear trees than bees. I prefer the term larval transfer because that's descriptive. That's actually what we're doing. But there are enough people trying to change beekeeping terminology without me getting involved. So I will stick to grafting because that's what everybody knows. Now, if you go to a queen rearing course, very often you'll be encouraged to make wax cell cups, which are really just a replica of what the bees do naturally. I don't know anybody these days that produces wax cups. Generally plastic cups. Now you can use natural cups. You can perhaps harvest them from the hives and save them till needed, and then fix them onto a bar in some way, usually by sort of a hot knife to melt the wax, or perhaps a soldering iron. Quite honestly, it is a bit of a fiddle. What I have done on a few occasions in the past is to graft into existing cups on a frame out in the field in an out apiary when I've been reasonably desperate. Most people use the plastic cups. I like what I call the JZBZ, which are American, and there are two types. I like the one with the little boss that's on the back. They're reusable, and I find them absolutely fine. They're reasonably priced too. Now you can use other items, one of which is the cup kit, which I'll be telling you a little bit about later. But of course, they will be used for a different purpose than they were intended. Not that that matters, because improvisation is a great part of beekeeping, as far as I'm concerned. Now, what I do find is that when I'm giving demonstrations and courses and that sort of thing, workshops, that 80% of attendees struggle to graft. Now, that's for a variety of reasons. Perhaps it's their eyesight isn't that great. Well, you can use aids, and in any case, if you're struggling to see things, then you probably shouldn't be considering queen rearing, unless of course somebody's helping you. Very often it's a mental barrier where people make up their mind they can't do it, and they're beaten before they start. The other thing which is quite common is you need to be quite dexterous, and some people aren't. So there is a challenge. In my own view, people, and my own observation really, is that some people get a lot better. And on one occasion, there was one lady that couldn't use two of the grafting tools that we had on offer, but she got on absolutely fine with an artist paintbrush. So what to graft with? There are three usual options. One which is called a Swiss grafting tool, which is the normal standard traditional tool. The Chinese grafting tool, which is a newer invention, and an artist paintbrush, but it needs to be a good quality one with soft bristles, rather than the cheap Charles one, which with stiff bristles. We'll use all three, and we get you all using them. See how you like them, and don't just give up if you can't do it first or second attempt. Don't give up. Just keep going, because you will get better, and that will drop the 80% that I was telling you about right down, hopefully, to near a zero. It doesn't matter who you talk to in beekeeping; they come up with all these different ways of doing it, using matchsticks, shaved down matchsticks, quills, paper clips, all sorts of things like that. Very often by people who've never used it. And on one occasion, I was asked by somebody if I used a seagull or quill off a seagull feather, and I said, "No, have you?" And he said, "No." So that's the sort of thing you get. Quite frankly, all of those things I wouldn't bother with. I'd forget them. Just use one of the other options. They are cheap enough, and bearing in mind we are hoping to produce good quality queens, there is going to be a little bit of a cost to it. And if you've got to keep shaving down matchsticks, it's something that I could find a better use of my time. So here are the JCBC cups. You need to mount them somehow. They have got a little boss on the back, which is not round, it's sort of oval. And the idea was that what you do is you put them into a split in a top bar, and then just twist them and they hold. But what I found is the saw that they use, or saw blade that's used in England, seems to be a different width than the one they use in the States. and they don't hold in very well. So what I've done is I've drilled a hole, and I believe it's 4mm hole, and they hold in. You'll have to check it out yourself. Um, I put them in a bar like this, 10 in a frame, and that works well for me. It may not work well for others, but it certainly works well for me. These JCBC cups, I think there are 5 or 6 different colours, which are great because you can colour code things, and I've put them in there so that you can see some of the colours anyway. What you can do, of course, is that you can take, let's say, the yellow ones from one colony and the red ones from another one, if you wish, and you can get them raised at the same time. That's probably the sort of thing that somebody would do if they only want, half a dozen queens. This is a Swiss grafting tool. There are several different kinds, but the principle is the same. The end is just flattened and then bent slightly so that it goes underneath the larva in the cell. And then you lift the larva out and then just put it straight into the cup, and then move the grafting tool away, and the larva gets left behind, or it should do. But I did say you might need a little bit of practice. So there it is, closer up. The Chinese grafting tool is a slightly different principle, which we'll show you when you come on the course, or the practical side of the course anyway. Don't be frightened to use aids. In this case, I'm using a torch because depending on where you do it, the light might not be that great. We're not setting up like the professional queen rearers do, where they've got lighting in certain places. I generally do it on the top of a beehive, and of course I'm out in the open. And then the third one is an artist paintbrush. We're told to use a certain size, 00, but I find that other sizes do the job just as well. It's just one of these things that somebody wrote it once and other people copy it. They do work well. You need a slightly different technique, but we will demonstrate that on the practical element of the course. So there's the cup. You can't quite see it, the larva in the bottom, but that I hope you can. And there is the larva in the bottom. That's the sort of size that you want, and the position you put it in. Now, some people will do what's called a priming the cups, where they take raw jelly out of an existing queen cell, usually mix it up with a little bit of distilled water, and place that in the base of the cell cup. I've never found any need to do that. In fact, I've done experiments, and I've found there's really no difference in the take. So here's a Chinese grafting tool with a larva on the end, up against the head of a frame now for comparison. So that's the sort of size larva that you want. If you can get it a little bit smaller than that, that's better. And there's the same thing on the end of a Swiss grafting tool. That larva, in my opinion, is probably right on the top limit, but it will you'll still get quite a reasonable queen from that. Have a smaller larva if you possibly can. There it is, another close-up. Now, you then put the larva in the colony that's prepared to build them into queen cells. I generally check 2 hours later because I find that most of the larvae that have been rejected are rejected within the first couple of hours. Certainly 50% of the rejects anyway. Now, if you do that, of course, you just assume that they're going to emerge on the same day. If you check 24 hours later, then obviously they're going to emerge, or the regrafts are going to emerge 24 hours later. You can use that for management purposes. So perhaps if you have got, let's say, 7 on a bar, and 2 of them are a day older, it will help you with making up queen mating nukes or dequeening earlier ones. So after a couple of hours, what I find is the bees usually put a little ring of wax around the cell cup. That generally suggests that they've accepted those. Not always though, because sometimes they will put a little ring round when they've removed the larva. That's it. A lot closer. You'll see that the one on the right has got quite a lot of larval food in, so even after a couple of hours the bees have already started to feed that quite well. The one in the middle, not quite as much food, but it looks as if it's going to be accepted. The one on the end looks as if it might not be accepted, although you can still see the larva just at the top of the cup there. So you can't always tell after a couple of hours, but it's quite a good indicator. Now, during a nectar flow, or if the colony are being fed, you must expect quite a lot of larval food. So here they are 24 hours later. That's probably a different one. But you can see that the bees have already substantially built the queen cells. That is a take of 10 out of 10, which I have to say for an amateur situation is probably quite rare. Anything between perhaps 6 and 8 is normal and acceptable too. These are much older. In fact, they're sealed, so and they're well dimpled. So although I can't tell, they were probably grafted 6, 7, might have been 8 or 9 days earlier. Be careful, because that one on the right there, number 1, that is much longer than the rest. What's probably happened is that the larva dropped away from the food as the cell was being built, and the bees just extended the cell to cover the larva. That one I wouldn't even consider using. I would just pinch it out now. So apart from that, on that bar itself there are 8 out of 10. I like to name the stations if I can. In fact, all my bars are 1 to 10. When you've got your frame of larva, you need to shake the bees off. I don't like brushes. I don't like bee brushes because I think they wind bees up. But shake carefully. It doesn't damage the larva, but it may move them in the cells, especially if you've got a heavy nectar flow on and you've got a lot of larval food. Now, what I will say is that this frame here is very new, and that can cause problems, which I'll discuss a little bit later. And my comments on grafting. It's easier, I've found, with more larval food, although when there's a strong nectar flow, what I very often find is there's so much larval food in the base of the cell that often it's difficult to pick out the larva. The Chinese grafting tools will puncture holes in cells if they're young comb, which is what I mentioned on the last slide. We'll try and show you this and demonstrate it when we have the practical session. So if you are raising queens, then you do need a few, let's say, older combs. They don't have to be really old, but older combs. It's also easier, I find, to see larvae in darker comb anyway. If you can't see the larva very well, then don't be frightened to cut the cells. You can either shave them down, or you can run something like a scalpel or a razor blade along the line, and then just along the line of cells, that is, and then just move sideways. And that's one of the reasons that I've got things like scalpels in my kit box. Some of the myths that I've been hinting on, one of them is that keep being told if you flip larva over, they drown. Well, you can imagine I've done a little bit of an experiment. I did an article in the Bee Improvement magazine. It's in issue 46, the winter 2015 issue, where I had a bar of 10 larvae, 5 of each, in 4 colonies. Now, when I say 5 of each, there were 5 grafted normally, and 5 that I've deliberately flipped the larva over. And here are the results. The test colonies 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the next 2 rows are the number of larvae that were accepted. So out of 5 larvae in each one, where they're grafted normally, on colony 1 I lost 1 out of 5, colony 2 I didn't lose any, colony 3 I lost 1, and a colony 4 I lost 1. That gave me a total of 17 out of 20, which is 85% take, which for an amateur is, in my opinion, a very good, or my experience, very good. And when I flipped them over, so in the same colonies, there were 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5, and 3 out of 5 accepted, which gave 14 out of 20, which was a 70% acceptance rate, which is still quite, in fact, it's pretty good. Most amateur beekeepers will be happy with 70%, I would think. Now, when I say flipped over, I found it rather difficult to do anyway. And I keep hearing from some people that they don't do grafting because they flip the larva over. Well, they probably don't do the grafting because of other reasons, such as poor eyesight, poor dexterity, or whatever, and they're just using this as an excuse. But they were my results, and I think probably one of the reasons that the bottom line, those that have flipped over, is that it's actually quite difficult to do, and I may well have damaged the larva anyway. So if you can find a way of doing it without possibly damaging the larva, I suspect that 70% could be increased. Now, other people are going to do that experiment, and they're going to get different results. It was only a small sample, but it told me that it's not always true what you hear. So again, challenge what you're told, try it yourself, and see how you get on, because that's how I found it. And in fact, I originally found it out by accident, because I just assumed, like everybody else, that that larva drowned. Genta and cupkit are 2 words that a lot of beekeepers will have heard, but probably not know what they mean. There are 2 methods of queen rearing which are known as the cell plug method, where you have a plastic box and you confine the queen to the box by a queen excluder. In the box there are some holes which replicate cells. On the bottom there is effectively the base of the cell, which is a little plastic cup which can be removed. So the queen lays in the cells, and the egg obviously ends up in a cup. Once she's laid up, you remove the queen, let the larva develop from the egg, and when they're the right age, you then place those cups in holders. They're different, slightly different design, so they're not compatible. You place them in a holder, and then I put them in a bar, exactly the same as other methods that I use. Now, to get the box in a frame, you're advised to cut a hole in a comb. I tend not to do that. I found another way of doing it, which I would describe. So this is what you're advised to do. So you take a comb, cut a hole in it, and that one is actually a cup kit, not a genter, but it doesn't really matter. The principles are the same. But I thought to myself, I know what the bees are going to do. They are going to put nectar in the comb, which of course is what they do. So what on earth do you do with a cell plug box in a comb with honey in? So what I did is I found a different way of doing it, and this is what I've got. So I fix the box in the frame, and then I'll put those slats across, which are bee space apart. I just separated them with a pencil, which did the job, and that of course prevents the bees filling the hole up with comb. I did think about filling it in with a piece of hardboard or thin plywood. I've never got round to doing that, but this works pretty well, and I've got about 4 of these frames, and they work really well. Now, I prefer the cup kit to the genter. They're made by Nicot, or Nico, I suppose, in France. But be careful, because they're only called cup kit in Britain and Ireland. Elsewhere, they're called a cupulave. So if you know they're cupulave, then they're the same thing. As an engineer, I've had a look at them. They're very well made. They all fit together. Everything is compatible. But there is one slight warning with these. There are some cheap copies that are made elsewhere, which I have to say I have bought some, and they are very attractively priced. But what I found is they're incompatible with the real thing. And they're also incompatible with other copies as well. So the different manufacturers have got slightly different sizes, so of course nothing fits. And what I've found is that often the parts in the same kit don't fit. So it really is false economy. So I strongly advise against buying the cheap copies. I found it pretty infuriating, and so have other people. In fact, I've had beekeepers who've given me their kits because they're so annoyed with them. Now, these can be used for grafting, and I regularly do, and they're just as good really as the JZBZ. So if you don't want to use JZBZ, you can use these for grafting. So here it is, and I believe that was quarter of an hour after I put the queen in the box. I put it in a colony, and there are the bees in there, and they're feeding her and grooming her and doing all sorts of things that bees do to their queens. So here's a view looking on the back of the cup kit box, and I've got the light so that you can see the lava highlighted against the light. That's about the size that you want. And when it gets to that stage, all you do is find the number that you want that are the same size. You take the cups out. I find them very fiddly. So what I've got is some pointed nose pliers, and they come out quite easy. You then take these cups, put them in a holder, and then you can fix them to your cell bar. So there's the cup and the holder. So all you do is just push them in. They are tapered. There's a hole in the back of the holder so that you can push them out with a nail or a twig or something like that. And then you just fix them onto blocks. I've nailed those blocks onto the bar. Other people find different ways of doing it, but that's how I find it easy enough to do. And when you've done them, that's it, and that goes on into the colony. Now that bar that I've got those on, I put a nail in the side, right in the centre, so that you can swivel it, so that it's easier to load, and then just swivel it back vertical when you put the frame in the colony. Now, what you can also do is graft into these cups, or graft the rejects. You can do exactly as you like. After 24 hours, I should think this is, looking at the at the size of them. Just carefully remove the bees. In this case, I'm using a twig with a green twig with the leaves removed. Much better in my experience than a bee brush, because twigs don't wind bees up. Bee brushes, in my experience, do. And when bees are wound up, they generally want to sting something, and I'd rather it wasn't me. So just carefully remove the bees, and then you can check to see what the level of take is. In this case, which may well be a different one, that is 10 out of 10, which is I won't say fairly rare, but it's not common. Usually expect to lose one or two. So there it is, looking in the ends of the cells, and you can see the mass of food in there, raw jelly. Here they are, probably almost ready to be distributed, and there's 10 out of 10 there. But as I will keep telling you, if you get seven or eight, you're doing pretty well. That ends part 2, so hope to see you in part 3.